Hey everyone, welcome back. Have you ever noticed that sometimes the best way to learn something really deeply is by uh diving headfirst into a tough
Oh,
problem,
absolutely.
figuring things out as you go along? Well, today we're going to tackle an educational approach that's built on exactly that idea.
Hmm.
It's called problem-based learning, or PBL for short. Now, you were kind enough to send over some really interesting research on PBL
Yeah.
that explores exactly what students learn through this method and, more importantly, how they learn it. So, our mission today is to take a deep dive into the world of PBL, figure out what makes it tick.
Right.
We'll look at its core principles, its goals, the nuts and bolts of how it actually works in the classroom.
Okay.
And of course, the big question, does it actually deliver? What does the research tell us about its effectiveness, especially when it comes to developing flexible knowledge, the
Hmm.
kind you can apply in all sorts of situations, and those critical lifelong learning skills that we all need?
That's the holy grail, isn't it?
It really is.
Finding ways to help people become lifelong learners.
Absolutely.
What's really fascinating about PBL is that while it might seem like kind of a new trendy thing in
Yeah,
education,
yeah.
it actually has a long history going way back, drawing on the ideas of thinkers like Kilpatrick and Dewey,
Oh, wow, yeah.
big names in education. They were all about, emphasizing hands-on experience
Practical application, yeah.
as the key to real deep learning. So PBL takes that core concept
Mm.
and gives it a kind of framework. It says learning isn't about just passively absorbing information, right?
No.
It's about actively grappling with these problems. You get your hands dirty and then
Get messy.
you reflect, right? You think about what you
The
did,
process.
what you discovered. And it's that double emphasis, developing problem-solving abilities while you're building your knowledge.
Yeah, those two things go hand in hand.
That's what makes PBL so potent, so powerful.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's a huge surge of interest in it.
A lot of buzz.
Across all levels of education, K-12, higher ed.
Yeah.
Because, well, it seems to tap into something,
Something deeper.
a more active, transferable kind of learning. And that's what we're all looking for.
That's the goal.
Yeah. And the engagement factor, it seems to just boost student motivation.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's more engaging when you're actively involved.
Absolutely.
Now, when we talk about learning through experience, other approaches like case studies or project-based learning kind of come to mind.
Right.
And the research you shared had this really helpful table, table I, that kind of lays out the differences. It's not just semantics. There are real fundamental differences in how PBL approaches learning compared to these other methods.
Exactly. Yeah. But we zoom out a bit, you see all these experiential approaches share the idea that, okay, learning needs a context, a meaningful task.
Right.
And the teacher is more of a guide,
Mm-hmm.
not the sage on the stage,
Yeah.
but
Facil
yeah, more of a facilitator.
yeah.
But the devil's in the details, right? And that's where PBL really distinguishes itself. It's the problem itself that's the heart of it.
The problem is central.
Yeah, PBL uses these realistic, messy, what we call ill-structured problems, the kind you might face in the real world.
Real life stuff.
Yeah, like think of a doctor diagnosing a patient or an educator like yourself designing a curriculum.
Right. Exactly.
These are problems that don't have a clear-cut answer. And the
Mhm.
problem isn't just an afterthought, something you use to apply knowledge you already have. No, it's the very thing that forces you to learn new stuff.
Yeah, the need to know.
And it sharpens your reasoning skills. It's like, oh, I need this information to solve this problem.
I love that. So it's different from, say, anchored instruction, where you might watch a video and then there's a challenge at the end.
Right.
Or project-based science, which usually starts with, a big question to guide a scientific investigation.
Yeah, exactly.
In PBL, the problem itself is like the hub.
The driving force.
Yeah, the driving force. You build knowledge and develop reasoning strategies around it. Now, the research also outlines this really clear learning cycle. It's in Figure 1 if you're following along. Can you walk us through those steps? Like what happens typically in a PBL cycle?
So PBL is beautifully systematic in the way it guides students through this problem-solving process.
Mhm.
It usually starts with, the facilitator presenting a problem.
Uh,
And often they'll be a little stingy with the initial information.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, just enough to pique their curiosity.
Okay.
And this prompts the students to, start questioning, to dig for more details.
Right, get those critical thinking juices flowing.
Exactly. They might even need to do some research right off the bat, maybe even conduct experiments.
Wow.
Then at different points, the group will pause, take
Yeah.
a breath, reflect on what they've gathered, maybe ask some clarifying questions.
Okay.
And this is where they start brainstorming, throwing out potential explanations, solutions, those hypotheses we talked about.
Right, right.
But here's a crucial step, and this is often where traditional learning kind of skips over. They pinpoint what they don't know.
Identifying the gaps.
Exactly.
Mm.
These gaps, they become their learning issues. This is what drives their independent research, their self-directed learning.
Okay, so they figure out what they need to know, and then they go and find it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they regroup, share what they've learned, revisit their initial hypotheses, maybe tweak them.
Refine them.
Yeah, refine them, or even come up with new ones.
Okay.
And finally, there's this all-important reflection phase where they think about, what they've learned.
The metacognitive piece.
Right, the metacognitive piece. How well they work together, how effective their individual learning strategies were.
Mm.
And throughout all this, the facilitator's there, not to lecture, but to guide.
It's fascinating. And that element of self-directed learning, or SDL, it seems to be one of those things that really sets PBL apart. The research really emphasizes how students have to take ownership of their learning, be reflective, think critically. It's not just about getting the answer to that one problem.
Absolutely. And, if we think about you, the listener,
Yeah.
someone who clearly loves to learn
That's our audience, yeah.
and is good at it, SDL is so key. It's about giving you the power, the autonomy to say, okay, this is what I need to learn, and then to go find it.
Take charge.
Yeah, take charge. It's not just about that one problem.
Mm.
It's about developing that internal drive and those skills that make you a lifelong learner. And that's gold.
I love that. Now, the research outlines 5 main goals of PBL, so let's break those down a little bit.
Okay.
The first one is developing flexible knowledge. What does that actually mean?
So flexible knowledge, it's not just about, memorizing a bunch of facts and figures.
No.
It's about being able to take information from different areas, different domains.
Yeah, connect the dots.
Connect the dots and really understand those underlying principles, those big ideas that tie everything together.
It's the forest, not the trees.
Exactly. And crucially, being able to use that knowledge in different situations, in different contexts.
Like adaptable knowledge.
Adaptable, that's the word. It's not confined to one specific textbook or one specific classroom.
Right.
The idea is that by, encountering a concept again and again in different problem-solving contexts,
Reinforce it.
yeah, it becomes more flexible, easier to access when you need it.
It sticks.
It sticks, it makes sense, it's meaningful.
I love that. So the second goal is developing effective problem-solving skills. We kind of touched on this with the learning cycle. But what are the specific skills PBL is trying to foster?
So here, think of it like giving students a toolkit.
Okay, a mental toolkit.
Yeah, a mental toolkit for tackling any problem. So, for instance, when they're working on that, medical diagnosis problem in PBL, they might learn hypothetical deductive reasoning.
Ooh, big word.
It sounds fancy, but it's basically forming a hypothesis and then testing it.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Or in a design challenge, they might use analogical reasoning, drawing on past experiences, seeing parallels, thinking, okay, this problem is kind of like that one, so maybe this solution could work.
I like that.
And of course, the metacognitive aspect is huge.
That's the thinking about thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Being able to plan your approach,
Yeah.
to monitor your progress,
Yeah.
to evaluate, did I achieve my goals? It's that higher level of thinking about your own thinking processes.
It's that next level up. And the third goal is one we've already talked about, developing self-directed, lifelong learning skills.
Right. That's the big one.
The research lists things like being aware of your own thinking, being able to set learning goals, planning your learning strategies, and monitoring your progress.
Precisely. It's like nurturing that inner compass for learning. Knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know, being able to say, okay, this is what I need to learn to solve this problem, figuring out how best to learn it, and then constantly checking in.
Self-assessing.
Self-assessing, yeah. And these are the skills that will last, long after you've moved on from that specific problem.
Yeah, those transferable skills.
Yeah.
Okay, the fourth goal is becoming effective collaborators, which is, in today's world, so essential.
It really is. You're not working in a vacuum anymore.
No, you're not. How does PBL try to encourage this?
Well, when you put students together to solve these tough problems,
They have to work as a team.
they have no choice. They got to function as a team.
Yeah.
So they have to learn to find common ground, to work through disagreements, to make decisions together, negotiate, right? And ultimately come to a shared understanding or a shared solution. This requires clear communication, everyone participating, being active,
Right.
and just a simple act of explaining your thinking to someone else.
That helps solidify it.
It really does. It strengthens your own understanding.
Yeah, that's a great point. And finally, the fifth goal is becoming intrinsically motivated to learn. That's the dream, right?
That's the holy grail for any educator.
Yeah. How does PBL try to spark that internal drive?
The idea is that when the learning comes from a real need,
Yeah.
like I need to know this to solve this problem, as opposed to I need to know this for the test.
Because it's on the syllabus.
Exactly. Students become more invested.
They care.
They care. And if the problem's engaging, if it connects to their lives,
That's relevant.
if it's relevant, and it presents a challenge that's just right, not too easy, not too hard.
It's a Goldilocks zone.
Exactly. It sparks that curiosity, that desire to learn. Plus, PBL is often focused on understanding, on independent thinking.
Not just rote memorization.
Not just memorizing facts. And that can be so much more motivating, And when students feel like they have some control, some say
Agency,
yeah, over their learning, that can really boost their motivation.
Okay, so we've got these 5 core goals. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does PBL actually work in the classroom? The research describes this PBL tutorial process, referencing Figure 1 again.
Right.
Can you walk us through the steps of what typically happens in a PBL session?
Sure. So it usually kicks off with the facilitator presenting the group with this complex problem. And like we said before, they often give them very limited information at the start.
Okay.
Just enough to get them thinking, to get them asking questions.
To spark that curiosity.
Exactly. They'll need to question the facilitator, maybe do some initial research, some experiments. Then at certain points, the group takes a step back.
They pause.
They pause, reflect on what they've gathered, ask some clarifying questions, and start brainstorming.
Okay.
They'll propose possible explanations, solutions, hypotheses.
Right.
And crucially, they'll identify what they don't know, those learning issues.
What gaps?
Those gaps then drive their independent research, their self-directed learning phase. They dive deep into those areas they need to know more about. Then they come back together, share what they've learned, reevaluate their hypotheses, maybe come up with new ones based on their findings. And finally, they have that final reflection on everything, what they learned, how they work together, how effective their learning strategies were.
And that facilitator is there to guide them through the whole process.
As a guide on the side.
Right. Now, the research also mentions this really interesting use of whiteboards in PBL. There's an example in Figure 2 with engineering students working on, I think, a chemical spill.
Yeah, a classic PBL scenario.
So how does this seemingly simple tool, the whiteboard, contribute to the whole learning experience?
Well, it might seem simple, but it's surprisingly powerful. The whiteboard becomes this central visual record of their thinking,
Yeah.
It's like an external brain for the group.
I love that, an external brain.
It's usually divided into 4 columns. You've got facts, which is all the information they've gathered about the problem. Then there's ideas, which is where they jot down their hypotheses, their potential solutions.
Okay.
Learning issues, which of course are those knowledge gaps they've identified.
All the things they need to find out.
Exactly. And finally, an action plan. Their strategy for solving the problem or gathering more information. So this structured approach really helps to make their thinking visible. It's not just swirling around in their heads.
Everyone can see it.
Everyone can see it. And they can negotiate their understanding, build knowledge together, keep track of their progress. It's really a powerful tool for planning and monitoring.
Okay, let's zoom in on the problem itself for a minute.
Okay.
The research says it needs to be complex, ill-structured, meaning there's no one right answer. Messy, open-ended. It should also feel realistic, relevant to the students' lives. What else makes for a good PBL problem?
So a well-designed problem, it should provide feedback, even if it's not explicit. Students should be able to see the consequences of their decisions, their thinking.
Oh, that's interesting.
It should also encourage them to make conjectures, to argue their points, debate, because that's how you refine your thinking.
And get to that deeper understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the solution, it shouldn't be obvious. It should require them to connect the dots, to really work for it.
To synthesize the information.
Exactly. And good problems often start where the students are, tap into their existing knowledge, so they're engaged right from the beginning. And importantly, in a well-designed PBL curriculum, you revisit key concepts across multiple problems.
Oh, that makes sense.
So you get that deeper, more flexible understanding.
It's reinforced.
Yeah. And many effective PBL problems also require students to draw on knowledge from different subjects.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just siloed learning.
Exactly. It breaks down those barriers, shows them how knowledge connects in the real world. And of course, they're developing those crucial communication skills.
Yeah, because they have to explain their thinking to people from different disciplines, potentially.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the students, the problems. Let's talk about the facilitator, the teacher in this context.
Right.
The research emphasizes that they're not a lecturer, but more of an expert learner, modeling good learning strategies. They even use the term cognitive apprenticeship.
Yeah, it's a cool concept.
What does that role actually look like in practice?
So the facilitator's not there to give all the answers,
No, it's not a lecture.
No sage on the stage. They're like a more experienced learner guiding the less experienced ones.
Okay.
They model effective learning strategies, mostly by asking thoughtful questions,
Guiding questions.
Guiding questions, exactly. Questions that push students to explain their thinking, to justify their reasoning. They're constantly scaffolding, providing support.
Okay.
But they gradually reduce that support as the students gain confidence.
They fade out.
They fade out, exactly. They guide them through the problem-solving process. They keep an eye on the group dynamics, make sure everyone's participating, and encourage that externalization of thinking that we talked about with the whiteboard. They're modeling those very skills that PBL is trying to develop.
And it sounds like a very subtle and nuanced role, right?
It is. It's a delicate dance.
Yeah, and the research mentions the challenges of facilitation, especially when you try to scale PBL up from those small, well-resourced groups to a typical classroom setting.
Right. That's the reality for most teachers.
Yeah. What are some of those challenges, and how can we address them?
So ideally, you have a dedicated facilitator for each small group.
Right. In a perfect world.
In a perfect world. But in a real classroom, you've got one teacher and maybe 30 students.
Yeah.
So knowing when to intervene, when a group is stuck or going off track,
It's tough.
it requires real finesse. The research mentions the wandering facilitation model, where the teacher circulates between groups using those visual cues from the whiteboards.
Oh, yeah, to kind of quickly assess.
Yeah, get a sense of where they are.
Mm.
Another idea is having students take turns being the facilitator, maybe with prompt cards to guide their questioning. And when you don't have a dedicated facilitator for every group, you need to get creative about that reflection stage.
Yeah.
Maybe structured journals or reflection prompts. And the research really emphasizes the need for more research on how to effectively facilitate PBL with younger learners in real classroom settings with all the constraints that exist.
Absolutely, because it is a very different context. Now, collaboration is so key to PBL.
Oh, it's at the heart of it.
Yeah, the idea is that by working in small groups, you not only share the workload, but also, you learn from each other's strengths and perspectives.
Yeah, it's all about leveraging that collective intelligence.
So how does this collaborative aspect actually play out, and what does the research say about its effectiveness?
So the idea is that, small groups distribute that cognitive load.
Okay.
And they tap into what we call distributed expertise.
So everyone becomes an expert in something.
Exactly. You divide up those learning issues, each student delves deep into one area, and then they bring their expertise back to the group.
I like that.
And research does suggest that these kinds of small group discussions, the debates that are so typical of PBL,
Yeah.
they really do enhance problem solving. They promote higher level thinking.
Right.
And they lead to a much richer shared understanding.
But don't students need some guidance, some scaffolding for that collaboration to be effective?
Absolutely, yeah. Students don't always intuitively know how to collaborate effectively.
Right.
That's why traditionally the facilitator plays such a crucial role, guiding those interactions, making sure things run smoothly. And in settings where you might not have that dedicated facilitator, there are strategies like, assigning roles within the group.
Okay.
Maybe someone's the predictor, someone's the summarizer, someone keeps track of the time.
Right.
Or you can use more structured cooperation techniques.
To kind of keep things on track.
Yeah, keep things on track. Now, the research does point out that these haven't been extensively studied in PBL classrooms yet, but they hold promise.
It makes sense. Okay, let's talk about another key component, reflection.
The glue that holds it all together.
Yeah, it's not just about getting the answer.
No.
It's about thinking about what you've learned, how you learned it.
It's about metacognition.
Why is that so crucial in PBL?
Because reflection is what helps students really cement that knowledge, to build that deep, flexible understanding. It's about making connections, right? Connecting the new information to what they already know, abstracting those big ideas, figuring out how the strategies they used can be applied elsewhere.
So transferring the knowledge.
Transferring it. And it happens throughout the process, and of course at the end of each problem. They're encouraged to think critically about their ideas.
Their thought process.
Their thought process, their level of understanding, how they collaborated, how well their learning strategies worked. And this process of making inferences, identifying gaps in their thinking, really trying to see how this knowledge can be applied in other contexts. It's so important.
Yeah, it's that higher order thinking.
Exactly. And as the research points out, transferring those general principles to new tasks is often difficult.
It's not easy.
It's not. But reflection helps to increase the likelihood of that happening.
And the research gives a great example of Delia, a medical student, engaging in this kind of critical self-reflection.
Oh, yeah, Delia is a great example.
And getting feedback from her peers.
Right, and that peer feedback is so valuable.
Yeah, it's not just you reflecting in a vacuum.
Exactly. And what's great about Delia's example is it's so specific, so behavior-focused.
Not just, I learned a lot.
No, not just, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
She's talking about specific knowledge gaps, her strengths, even noticing patterns in her thinking.
Wow.
And the feedback she gets from her peers is equally specific. They point out things she did well and areas for improvement. It's targeted, actionable feedback.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the research also talks about structured journals as a way to support reflection, especially when you don't have that dedicated facilitator.
Right, because you need to provide that structure, that scaffolding.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to the evidence for PBL, the research you shared points out that a lot of it comes from medical schools and studies with gifted students.
Right. That's an important caveat.
Yeah, it's not evenly distributed across all levels of education.
No. And the research methods are often, case studies, pre-post tests, what we call quasi-experimental designs.
Right.
Not always those rigorous controlled experiments that we love.
Okay, but what does the evidence say, even with those limitations, about whether PBL achieves those 5 big goals we talked about?
So let's start with the first goal, building that extensive, flexible knowledge.
Okay.
The picture is interesting. Some meta-analyses, those studies that combine the results of many individual studies, have found that PBL students sometimes score a little lower on traditional multiple-choice basic science exams.
Oh,
compared to students in more traditional lecture-based programs.
So that sounds like a negative.
It might seem that way on the surface. But if we think about what PBL is really trying to do, those traditional tests might not be the best way to measure that deep, integrated knowledge.
Right, they're not testing for the right things.
Exactly. And interestingly, the same meta-analyses often show that PBL students do better on assessments that are more aligned with real-world problem solving.
Okay.
Things like clinical performance or those more complex problem-solving tasks.
So it's about the type of assessment.
Exactly. And a more recent meta-analysis actually found no difference in factual knowledge between PBL and traditional students. But it did find that PBL students were better at applying that knowledge.
So they could use it.
They could use it, exactly. Studies that looked at how students explain complex problems also found that PBL students give more detailed explanations.
Okay.
Even if they sometimes make more initial errors.
So they're taking more risks.
Yeah, they're trying to apply those new concepts.
Yeah.
And those initial errors can be part of the learning process.
They're learning from their mistakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And longitudinal studies, those that follow students over time, have shown that PBL students are more likely to develop accurate hypotheses, to create those coherent explanations, to use scientific concepts effectively.
So their knowledge becomes more flexible over time.
Over time, exactly.
What about undergraduate education and younger students, like in K-12 settings?
So the research there is more varied.
Okay.
But there are some encouraging findings.
Good.
Studies in undergraduate engineering teacher education programs have shown that PBL can lead to more factual knowledge, better problem solving, and better transfer of concepts.
Okay.
There's even research that suggests trying to solve a problem before a lecture actually helps you learn more from the lecture.
Oh, wow. That's counterintuitive.
It is. It is.
But interesting.
But it makes sense when you've grappled with it, And qualitative analyses of undergrads in PBL courses show how their understanding deepens over time.
Okay.
They go from these vague, abstract descriptions to more sophisticated, applied understandings.
It becomes more concrete.
Becomes more concrete, connected to problem solutions. And then, with younger learners, studies using things like anchored instruction, which often use video scenarios.
Yeah, right.
They show positive outcomes. Research with gifted high school students in PBL has shown higher scores on multiple choice tests, better retention.
Okay.
Even with sixth graders, a PDL unit on artificial lungs
Interesting.
led to greater gains. But the researchers also noted some lingering misunderstandings. So even though the results are promising,
You need that careful design.
you need that careful design, especially with younger learners.
Right, to make sure they're really grasping the concepts.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to that second goal, developing effective problem-solving skills. What's the research say there?
So some key studies have shown that PBL students are more likely to use what we call hypothesis-driven reasoning, which is often explicitly taught in PBL,
Okay.
compared to students in traditional programs who might rely more on data-driven reasoning. Data-driven reasoning is great for experts when they're dealing with familiar problems, but for novices,
Yeah.
tackling new, complex issues,
It's a different beast.
it's a different beast. And lab experiments have also shown that learning through generating and testing hypotheses leads to better transfer,
Okay, so it's more adaptable.
more adaptable.
Yeah.
And several studies have found that PBL students are more likely to transfer that approach to completely unrelated problems
Wow.
and to give more coherent explanations.
So they're able to take those skills and apply them in different situations.
Exactly. And what's really cool, research has also shown that PBL students are more likely to engage in what we call problem finding,
Oh, interesting.
which is identifying and defining the actual problem.
Which is crucial in real life, right?
Yeah, crucial. Because often the problem isn't handed to you on a silver platter.
No, you have to figure out what the problem is first.
Exactly.
Okay, what about the evidence for the development of self-directed learning skills, that third goal? The research mentions that it's a really complex thing to study and measure.
It really is.
Yeah.
SDL is slippery.
Yeah.
Qualitative studies, where researchers really delve into students' experiences,
Okay.
have shown that PBL students in some disciplines can feel a bit lost at first,
Okay.
unsure about what they should be studying,
It's that open-endedness.
Yeah, it's that freedom, but it can also be a challenge. And then longitudinal analyses, which follow students over time, have shown that medical students' SDL strategies evolve.
They adapt.
They adapt, they change. It's influenced by things like their academic self-concept,
So how confident they are.
how confident they are, the learning opportunities available, how they're being assessed. And these studies really highlight that everyone comes to PBL with their own baggage,
Their own learning styles.
their own learning styles, their own beliefs about learning, and the ones who thrive